Hello, everybody. Welcome to Resilience Plus Rise, the podcast where we transform adversity into triumphs, illuminate the extraordinary potential within us. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria. I'm a coach, I'm an ultra marathoner, and a firm believer in your next powerful chapter. As I know, Resilience Rise is not just a podcast, it's a movement. It's a space where ordinary life becomes extraordinary inspiration. Together, we explore transformative power of resilience and the mind shifts that turns challenges into opportunities. This podcast is a companion to my upcoming book, Resilience Plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash the Marathon of Life Mindset, coming up early 2025 Feb March. Here we amplify the stories of hope, perseverance, and success to inspire your journey. Today, as I mentioned, it's about adversities. And it is such an amazing honor to host Dr. Claudette Renee Lyons. She is an honorary doctor of philosophy in pastoral psychology. But just telling about that doesn't really qualify a lot about what I'm saying. She has got an amazing background in being an advocate for women and children's safety. She serves as an ambassador for Shared Hope International. She's a yoga teacher. She's been involved in fitness and self defense. She brings a comprehensive approach to her healing and educational practices. She's a musician. She's a coach. She's an actress. Wow. Just talking about these particular things. And sometimes we feel that, oh, I'm doing this thing and that thing, and we feel our life is full. But I think so we can take a page out of Dr. Claudette. And from here on, I'll say Claudette and realize that how she manages different elements. She also assists clients with PTSD and, as I mentioned, education regarding violence, the root effects of trauma. And she's a healer. In fact, when I talked the next statement, it took me a pause. She has experienced death more than an average person. She considers death in being a perception. Currently, she's focusing her energies in being a hypnotherapist. But rather than me just going and talking about it, let's dive deep along with Claudette. Hi, Claudette. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.
So, what I mentioned about you, that's a huge. I mean, I've had guests in my podcast, but having the dynamics of what you have got about it's not only about the credentials but where all you have focused your life and its energies, etc. That's a lot. So if you could take us through a journey where
Mhm.
you were and who are you now.
Yes, very good. I'll be happy to. We'll start in the beginning. When I was born as a little baby, my father was Special Forces. I was born on a military base, and my father taught me a lot of things at a very young age that he was practicing that had to do with us. He referred to us, the majority of our experience here is that we are energy. And so, as a very young child, my father would have me sit down with him and he would teach me things like isometrics between a door frame and feeling our energy from both sides equally and bringing it into the very center of the being. And he was very natured to connect the mind and the body. So he was
Wow.
very physically fit. And I'm very blessed that he taught me these ways because he taught me as a child that our brain creates these different types of waves and patterns, and that we can tap into these different types of waves, and they have very specific purposes. So he kind of taught me this world that appeared as a child, you can imagine, to be very exciting, very good news, something that I really enjoyed to participate with. And my mother, on the other hand, was very, 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 very feminine, always was just very smiling, singing around the house, dancing, very feminine natured, laughing, very receptive. Always had very floral, colorful dresses and prints on, and she was very spiritually based. She raised me as a Jehovah's Witness. I was homeschooled for the majority of my youth, and that allowed me to begin a lot of different activities that were more along the arts of life. So as a child, I did a lot of gymnastics, a lot of dance, a lot of camping in nature for weeks, a lot of skiing, snowboarding, playing violin, learning interesting things such as cued speech, which is a form of communication through symbols and placement of the hand and the face. Um, and I did read a lot of the Bible, you can imagine. I was
Okay.
in the Kingdom Hall reading Bible, 4 times a week, and then even knocking on doors at a young age. And then I was, getting through some barriers that maybe many adults we have with confronting people we don't know, messages about things that we feel are spiritual versus materialistic. And so another very interesting aspect of my youth was that as a Jehovah's Witness, I wasn't participating in holidays, birthdays. Don't get me wrong, we had a really good childhood. We were always, as I said, I was singing and dancing my way through life. I was very excited about life. However, I wasn't doing things like saluting the flag and things that, come to find out, when I left my home at 15 on
Wow.
my
Okay.
own, I entered this world that was completely different from what the world I had been in, meaning, there were politics. I had no idea what that was, for many, many years. I had no idea what Democrat or Republican was, and I didn't understand that part of life. I didn't understand some of the, uh, you know, I guess we could say they're rituals that we've, adopted in our ways. But certainly I had my own way of life, which seemed to be more of a free spirit, which is a very good thing in my opinion. So if I fast forward a little bit, I did some great things in my teenage years, being a free, just on my own, exploring this brand new world. And I began singing in bands. And then I decided at about 21 to begin a career. And so I did that in an emergency department, really a level two trauma center. And I became educated through that process
Mm-hmm.
to become, emergency technician, medic in the emergency department. At that time, you can imagine I was experiencing things in life that, again, I probably the majority of people are not seeing, which is people coming in from accidents, people dying there before you, whether they're children, babies, or 50, 60, 70, 80. It doesn't really matter because there's a communication that occurs when you're witnessing the effect of that passing, through the system of biology, the body. We're learning the
Mm-hmm.
anatomy of the body. It becomes very intimate. But also, one thing that's very profound to me as an empath is hearing the family's response to their loved ones not coming home when they come into the ER, and they just saw their loved one that morning, and everybody thinks that the next day will come and the next day will be the same, and the people in our lives will just return and remain. And that's very much not always how it goes with the cycles of life. And so I saw a lot of this working in the emergency department. And it kind of really spoke to my soul in many ways that ended up being very, very important for the rest of my journey so far.
Mm.
And that rest of the journey meant that my mother and father would pass unexpectedly when I was still fairly young in my early 20s. And then after they did that, I started to have a lot of changes within me. And I no longer wanted to work in a corporate hospital because I felt that it was constraining the true ability to speak to the soul rather than a lot of the processing that I was experiencing as I moved from emergency medicine into an interim management position in a family practice. I had a wonderful time with the people in the office. Don't get me wrong. I just loved the team. It was amazing. However, I was really alarmed by the rate of pharmaceuticals being given to little children because they were being diagnosed with so many different types of, um, I mean, I guess, disabilities or disorders that I just thought maybe when I saw these children coming in the beginning with their mom or dad or guardian, and they were, awake and alive and really full of life. And then several months later, they'd come in for follow ups and they were very like flatline. There
Oh,
wasn't a lot of
okay.
life left to them. And what I started to gather from a lot of what I was witnessing is that my soul didn't want to be around helping in a way that meant let's just give people a pill and send them home because there was something more. And the reason that I can tell you this is true is because I was going through that myself. I needed to help myself through these griefful moments I was experiencing from my mother and my father passing. I started to have some panic attacks and some anxiety that I had never experienced. And I remember I was fearful that somebody would see me that way and want to give me some of these pharmaceuticals, and I didn't want to be treated with any pills. I wanted to not feel sad, but I knew there had to be a solution inside of myself. Maybe that's some of what my dad had taught me as a child, right?
Hmm.
Search within. You have everything you need. Just you have to figure it out. So at that time, I gave my career up. I had been there for I think over 10 years. And I said, I can't do this anymore. It doesn't feel true to me. And I found breathing techniques for myself, and it started to bring me back into my body. I was like, leaving my body with these anxieties sometimes, right? Breathing techniques brought me back into myself. And then I found the breathing techniques through a teacher. And then it led me to become trained in yoga, Kundalini yoga.
Hmm.
And then I decided, wow, look at this. Like, I have got this recipe now that really just turned me from feeling like a 0, 1, 2, 3 to a 10. Like, this is amazing. And so that became
Fantastic.
my new fire in me to help others. So I didn't give up though. I still felt like I had to deliver some sort of better message through the gateway of death. And I know that sounds interesting, but I had seen so many people die through those years of emergency medicine. So I started to work with hospice clients, and that's people that are they're dying, they're passing, but they're at home. And I thought this feels more intimate to me, like I
Hmm.
can just not have all of this like hospital feeling, all of the, and have the home and the family. And maybe what my big calling was to be by these people and at least even say a silent prayer of intention and involve my heart and my soul. So I started to do that with some people for several years. And it was very profound because I felt like maybe I was gaining some closure that I was needing for kind of like a debriefing, right?
Wonderful.
So I
Okay.
started to say some prayers, and that was very beautiful. So that ended that portion of my career, and then I began to. I actually had a near death right around that time. So on
Hmm.
the solar eclipse of totality in 2017, I was attacked and I was brutally beaten up and strangled. And really, I probably should have, and I'm glad I didn't, but died. And I
Oh,
had a near death, which was very, very profound for me. You said something in the beginning that ties in this moment, and it became a big reset for me. Having a near death is something that's so profound for me, and I'm sure for other people. I've read their stories or watched their documentaries and films, maybe spoken personally to one or two, is that it's like a reset. It's such a moment that now I knew immediately after I got over like the major trauma of it, which was intense, right? Is that I can refer to coming back with the knowing that I'm coming back. And it kind of eliminated or almost destroyed or dissolved so much baggage
okay.
that that it may be just part of our human journey, whether that's genetic, whether it's just collective, or maybe very individual. There's a certain type of thought process that I believe that we have through programming, and some of that framework just kind of dissolved with that near death experience. And so, one of the worst and traumatic events that you could probably imagine has turned out to be a huge blessing
Wow.
because
I,
well, it shifts so much perspective. So then we get
of
to
course.
another conversation that I want to have with you is another thing that was happening during my 20s to 30s in the emergency departments, witnessing all of that death and all of these really traumatic things. It wasn't only death. A lot of it is
Mm.
just the psychology of humanity. Sometimes we would have people come in that were suicidal trying to kill themselves, you know? Some of the things I saw were um, children being sexually abused, that I had to be a part of the state's investigation for 3 hours while I'm viewing these beautiful, precious children less than 2 feet from me with a social worker and police taking notes. You know, a lot of things were occurring inside of the emotional body, and our mind naturally wants to process it, right? However, without the connection to spirituality, why would we even be able to be willing to do that? It would only be cruel, wouldn't it? If you
Wow.
think about it.
It,
Yeah.
in
So,
fact,
so,
yes,
so
sir.
perspective is very important. You know, it's like these glasses. If I'm born wearing these and I only see here for the rest of my life, it would be very limiting, right? So, all of these events were proven to me in the material, physical flesh and being. Like I use this word of relativity. The closer something is to us, the more it has a weighted or maybe gravity of density, a gravity of relativity to us, to an understanding.
Okay.
And so all of these things that I witnessed in life, they brought me to a place where I was very willing. I needed, like needing to drink water in a desert. I needed to know more about perspective. So I ended up coming across the country of United States, America, and I was traveling and I went to a lot of Native American reservations to practice um, different forms of prayer. And so I was traveling across the United States, and I had a very rare opportunity to be with some very beautiful medicine men and clan mothers, and learning some native tongue, native prayer, sweat lodge, teepee lodge ceremonies. And I needed it because I was going through a lot of shifts, and the shifting can be heavy. The shifting comes with great emotion. It comes with prayers, it comes with some sorrow, it comes with need. Need is an interesting place to be, right?
Okay.
So so I did that, and I ended up coming to Sedona, Arizona after. And I say that it was like going, if you've seen the movie The Wizard of Oz, when
Hmm.
Dorothy goes in the
Dorothy.
balloon, and then she lands and says, "We know we're not in Kansas anymore." That's what it was like for me coming to Sedona. All of a
Okay.
sudden, I realized I was in a place that was going to grace me with the integration of all of these experiences and the ability to transmutate into the gold, right? So the alchemist journey.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's been 5 years in Sedona, and I started immediately with a position for an astronomy business that's been here for 23 years. So I started to be able to learn and have an apprenticeship from an astronomer who's a retired NASA radio astronomer and naval intelligence, Rick Schaefer, and he became my mentor. And he started to teach me, and I started to learn by being in the presence of the universe every night with telescopes and astronomy. And as I was watching the cycles of a year in a whole new way than I had ever known. No, we're not talking the Gregorian calendar here. We're talking about being underneath the night sky while we're teaching people and watching Orion's Belt Nebula, for example, go around a full cycle, and all the constellations and all the stories of the sky going around you from season to season, and learning more and more about things like Polaris, our North Star, and then understanding life as a metaphor has been a medicine for me. I believe that everything that we experience here is just a very small portion of what we can really comprehend. But
Of
if we're
course.
allowing ourselves to stretch that perimeter, which the universe allows us to, then we understand everything is a measurement. Now, our only position in life here is to learn how to balance between it all. It's the best we can do. So then we understand that it's techniques that allow us to balance, right? Why do we love yoga? Why do we love, breathing? And
So,
then hypnotherapy. I learned hypnotherapy. I became a certified hypnotherapist. Why? Because all of the things I witnessed became a part of my subconscious, which would give me behaviors that are not what I say my conscious reality desires to be, because I need to take care of everything I've witnessed in a real way. So when we get into the subconscious mind, we can clear it out, and then we can put in what we desire for our journey to be.
oh, that's that's a lot to take in. And I mean, some people they live a full life, and at times they may look back at the threshold of death and see that what they have done, whether they have done anything. And what I've just heard from you, Claudette, is that in this particular span of life, you have uncovered so many elements of life itself, making you way more profound, making you more wiser about the way you can look at things. People, as I started in the beginning, is that when people have just one profession, they feel they are stuck. But you, I believe, you have shown what it is to break where you are and do what your soul yearns for. So there is so
Yes.
much of learnings. And guys, just note that I'll be putting out Claudette's web links and her website, etc., down in the comments below. So please feel free to reach out, because what we are just hearing over here is that Claudette is a treasure trove of what is possible, and
Mhm.
she has seen life in a very, very different way. Whether we are talking about astronomy, whether we are talking about hypnotherapy, whether we are talking about death in our very close quarters. She's also, as I mentioned, that she's into trauma assistance also. So if there's anything that stirs and you want to reach out, as I've known Claudette, she's a wonderful human, and she would be ready to always turn around and help. Question over here, Claudette, is that
Mhm.
so now all these particular learnings that you have done in the last 20 odd years, or maybe more than that, right? Or right, let me rephrase, right from childhood, what you have been learning, and now when it is slowly coming, and I know for a human like you, it doesn't stop over here. There's still going to be a lot more growth which is going to take place, because you are a seeker, and the universe always helps people to. Now, if I'm putting it all in one, not exactly one, but what are the learnings that you have come across at this point of time, and what that would you like to tell the audience that, okay, this is what I've
Mhm.
learned, and this is
Yes.
what you may want to consider? Could you answer on that?
Oh, yes. Yes. Let's see. So, the learning I want to say is that there's really, we all probably, the way that we're alive is because we have a drive for something. That's very important, right?
Hmm.
We Direction is important. A drive is important. Accomplishments is important. Feeling a fulfillment is important. Feeling an inner peace is important. Harmony. These things are important. But all of these things are, as we hear and we read everywhere, they're all inside of us. And so when it comes to making the changes that accommodate the drive, the thirst, the yearning, the seeking, the fulfillment, what we really stand best to do is to not really, this sounds so simple or obvious, but if we reflect on this, not blame anybody or any system that we're not doing it. You know,
It is, yeah.
and I know this sounds simple, but we're very much programmed. We are behavioral. We behave certain ways. We are patterned, and so the fastest way to disable the discontent, the unhappiness, is to stop the disloyalty to our own empowerment. And in order to do that, it begins with this right here, the mouth. It begins
Mhm.
with our own, senses. Don't listen to what doesn't feed you. Don't consider it as a possibility if it makes you feel down, suppressed, oppressed, depressed. Don't turn it off. Say no. Don't look at the things. Don't. Say no to the things that are not good for the journey, because as I described in the beginning, the journey is not promised tomorrow the same way that it is today. So every single day, we are writing our page in history. There's not one day where you go to bed that you didn't write a day in history. It may not be a very profound day because we didn't put a lot of thought into it. We didn't put a lot of heart into it. We didn't put soul into it. We didn't put intention into it. We didn't put our best action into it. We didn't behave by our self discipline into it. But it's still a day in history you're never going to get back. So become so present in the being that you are, that we are right here, right now. This is all that matters, is this moment and what we're going to do with this moment. So again, remember this thing. I'm not going to listen. Let me use an example. I remember years and years and years and years ago, before I knew how to say no, I would sit at tables where people would talk about their own family members disdainfully over a
Hmm.
cup of coffee, over a cup of coffee. And I remember I would get up and walk away and I felt so down. I didn't feel excited about life. So let me say something. Even if somebody's your family member, even if somebody's your colleague, it doesn't matter. Set the tone in the spirit for the life that you want to live it and be a leader. So if somebody's talking about something that makes you feel down or you don't agree with it, you don't have to be rude or mean or anything, but you can excuse yourself from the things in life that do not serve your soul's purpose. And by doing that, you are going to embody soul food, and you are going to embody the light that is going to fulfill you when you go to bed every night and you reflect, which we should on this day in history that we're writing. That's what I've learned.
Wow. So, guys, this is like I have just got a snapshot of life teaching. Just I know the time is very very short, but what I have just heard is it is so profound, something that we can
Mhm.
take on and something that we can work on practically every moment of life. As Claudette mentioned, is that we are not promised tomorrow, but all we have is today. There was another element that was mentioned is that when life is something is happening, rather than saying to us, saying that life is happening for us. understanding why it is happening, growing out of that particular element. The teachings we have just heard is that she has gone through different trials and challenges, seen things in a different way. And what we realize is that what life has been throwing at her is just allowing her to become the person that we are fortunate to have a talk today with. So, and as I mentioned, is that she has been involved with so many different elements. Claudette, just as being mindful of the time, is there anything that you would like to tell the audience um, about what really matters? Because again, as I mentioned, is that what you have been doing in the last few years is so enormous. From the people who are just people say that okay, I want to live a corporate life, I've got my money, I've got my uh, big house, fancy cars and everything to go along with it. But I know that you come from a different type of a learning, you come from about what life is all about. So any last words that you would at this towards the end of this podcast you would like to say to the audience, please?
Sure, sure. Um, I believe that we are all empathetic, and I believe that the world, we care very much. You know, we care about how our communities are. We care about the schools our children are going to. We care about the other side of the planet. We care, right? And sometimes that can put us in a place that can be disheartening or a little bit hard. Okay, imbalance. We're used always the word balance, and I want to
Hmm.
say that there's one way that we can remain balanced when we care, and we should care because we need to make changes. Let me say that
Hmm.
we need to be responsible when it comes to what we're putting on store shelves. Okay, whether it's food, whether it's clean water system, we need to be good human beings because we need to care about our footprint on this planet, and we need to be good role models for our children. Okay, that's really important. So, but in order to do all of this and not feel overwhelmed, right? Or saddened or depressed or anxious, and then we end up maybe escaping, is to prepare. That's what self-defense taught me. Is that I don't know if someone else would ever want to attack me. I hope not. But you know what I have instead of fear? Instead of that moment robbing my life by giving me the what ifs, I have the ability to teach my body that I'm intelligent and to learn how to move my body in ways that learn how to defend myself and those I love. And I learned that maybe one day there may be a circumstance or a situation that makes really healthy, organic, good, clean, mineral based waters and foods unavailable to me. But I can prepare by starting a greenhouse and planting seeds and teaching children. And then I go to bed again, fulfilled, curious, learning, growing. And so that's what I can do. And I want to just share that there's always something that we can do, and it's always going to be about preparation.
Absolutely, that's very much a gold nugget. Is that how prepared? And as what I've just heard is that life is for learning. It gives you
Mhm.
opportunities. It
Mhm.
may be through your challenges that at times you got to get more resilient and rise. That you dust up, and as we were just heard, Claudette, yes, you had a physical abuse of that you were beaten up, etc. But then you turned that and you said that okay, how can I get myself stronger rather than life throwing the curveballs to me? So guys, this is what we have learned in today's podcast, is that there is always opportunities. How it's how we pick up on those opportunities, how we get ourselves more resilient to make us not only better humans but also a better person on this earth as long as we are. So, with this, I would like to conclude today's session. Thank you so very much, Claudia,